I was shoving the trauma bag back into its slot when the pager went off. 3:47 in the morning, end of a 12-hour shift that had been mostly transfers and one drunk guy who'd fallen off a porch in Hinton. My partner had already clocked out. I had one boot untied and my jacket half off. The pager buzzed twice. That meant search and rescue, not another medical call, except it was routed through dispatch the same way a 911 comes in, which was weird. Usually SAR pages come from Shane directly, or through the county coordinator. I pulled the pager off my belt and checked the screen. Possible lost hiker, Big Bend tunnel area. Talcott, PD en route, respond if available. Big Bend tunnel. That was it. That was all I needed to see to know this wasn't going to be simple. I'd been on the volunteer SAR team for 3 years. We covered a lot of ground in Summers County, steep ridges, the Greenbrier River, old railroad grades that people loved to hike until they twisted an ankle or got turned around in the dark. Most of it was straightforward. Find the person, walk them out, file the report. Big Bend Tunnel wasn't like that. It's an old train tunnel, 1800s, cut straight through a mountain near Talcott, and it's still active, which means CSX runs freight through there. 1.25 miles long. No lights inside, no walkway, just ballast and ties and rails, and if you're in there when a train comes, you're done. Shane Vasquez, our SR supervisor, had a whole speech about it. He'd given it twice in the last year alone. Don't enter without state police. Don't enter without a railroad representative on scene. Don't enter unless we've confirmed no trains are scheduled. Don't assume the schedule is accurate. He'd looked right at me the second time he said it. I'm not great at waiting when someone's missing. I grabbed my SR vest from the hook and checked the pockets. Headlamp good. Spare batteries. 2 sets. Radio. Clipped to the shoulder strap. I had gloves, a whistle, marking tape, a small first aid kit. I added a 3rd set of batteries from the cabinet. Then I took one of the road flares from the rig and stuffed it into the side pocket of the vest. The flare wasn't standard SAR gear. I just figured if I ended up in that tunnel and a train came, I wanted something bright enough to maybe, possibly, make an engineer hit the brakes. Probably wouldn't help, but it felt better than nothing. Cassie's voice came through on the radio while I was lacing my boot back up. Dispatch to any SAR units responding to Big Bend. Be advised, reporting party is on scene at the trailhead parking area off Route 60. 2 subjects entered the tunnel approximately 2300 hours. 1 subject returned at 0330 and called 911. 2nd subject still unaccounted for. I keyed the mic. SAR 4 responding. ETA 15 minutes. Copy. SAR 4. 2 people went in. 1 came back. That bugged me a little. I grabbed my jacket and headed for my truck. The rain had started maybe an hour ago, light but steady. It made the asphalt slick and turned the mountains into these dark shapes you could barely see against the sky. I knew the route. Route 60 east through Hinton, then down toward Talcott. Maybe 12 miles. The roads were empty this time of night. Just me in the rain and the yellow line down the middle. Cassie came back on the radio. SAR 4. Additional information. Reporting party is a male, 20 years old, named Bill Brooks. Says he and the missing subject Manuel Webster, also male, 20, are students at Marshall. They went to explore the tunnel. Brooks says he heard screaming inside and saw a light moving deep in the tunnel. Also reports hearing a whistle, quote, like a train. But no train emerged. I clicked the mic twice to acknowledge. A light, screaming, whistle. Manuel could have had a flashlight, could have fallen, hurt himself, screamed. The whistle, though, that didn't fit. Unless a train had been in there and Bill just didn't see it come out the other side. Except you'd hear a train. You'd feel it. Those freight engines shake the ground. I passed the Hinton exit and kept going. The rain picked up. I turned the wipers up a notch. Cassie's voice again. SAR 4. Be advised Brooks is extremely distressed. PD on scene reports he's crying and, quote, Not making a lot of sense. Unclear if second subject is injured or lost. Copy. Extremely distressed. That probably meant Bill had seen something that scared him bad enough to leave his friend behind. People don't do that unless they panic hard, or unless something chased them out. I didn't love that thought. The road curved along the river. I could see the outline of the ridges on the other side, just barely. No lights except my headlights and the dim glow of a porch somewhere back in the trees. Shane was going to be pissed if I went in without him. He lived up near Meadow Bluff, at least 30 minutes out. State police were already en route, but getting a railroad rep this time of night could take an hour, maybe more. CSX didn't exactly keep someone on standby in Talcott. I wasn't planning to go in, not right away. But if Manuel was hurt, if he was bleeding or hypothermic or stuck, an hour was a long time. I pulled my phone out at a red light and checked for service. 2 bars. I thought about calling Shane, letting him know I was en route, but he'd just tell me to wait. I'd hear it in person soon enough. The light turned green. I kept driving. Cassie's voice crackled again. All units, Shane Vasquez en route from Meadow Bluff. ETA 35 minutes. State police on scene now. 35 minutes. I figured I'd get there, talk to Bill, maybe get a better sense of what actually happened. See if Manuel had come out on his own by the time I arrived. That was possible. People got scared, ran different directions, met back up later. It didn't explain the light or the whistle, but I'd heard stranger things from panicked witnesses. The trailhead parking area was just a gravel lot off the south side of Route 60. I'd been there once before, during the day on a training exercise. It was the main access point for people who wanted to see the tunnel without actually going inside. There was a path that led down to the east portal, maybe a quarter mile through the woods. I turned off the highway and onto the access road. My headlights caught the reflective strip on a state police cruiser parked at the edge of the lot. One other car, a little sedan, probably Bill's. I pulled in next to the cruiser and killed the engine. The rain was coming down steady now. I could hear it on the roof of the truck, a constant patter that made everything else feel muffled and far away. I sat there for a second, hands still on the wheel. Big Bend Tunnel. Middle of the night. One person out. One person still in. A light. Screaming. A whistle. Shane's voice in my head. Don't enter without state police and a railroad representative. I had state police. That was something. I grabbed my vest, pulled it on, and checked my headlamp one more time. The beam was bright and steady. I switched it off to save the battery. Then I opened the door and stepped out into the rain. The gravel lot was bigger than I remembered from the training run, probably because there was a bronze statue I'd completely forgotten about, John Henry, 9 feet tall, hammer raised, rain dripping off his shoulders. Someone had bolted him to a concrete pad at the edge where the lot met the trail. Kayla's truck was already there. She was standing near the tailgate with a coil of rope over one shoulder and a harness clipped to her belt. She looked pissed. Not at me. Just pissed in general. That was her default when it rained and she had to work in the middle of the night. I parked next to her and got out. She didn't say hey or nod or anything, just looked at me and said, "Radio's shit. Out here." Cutting in and out, tried Shane twice, got static. That bugged me a little. We were still in the open. If the radios were already dropping signal, they'd be useless inside the tunnel. I checked mine anyway, clicked the mic. SAR 4 to base, static. Then Cassie's voice, faint and chopped. Copy, barely. I let go of the mic. Yeah, that's bad. Kayla didn't answer. She was looking past me at the state police cruiser and the sedan parked near the trailhead marker. A trooper was standing under the overhang of a wooden info kiosk, talking to someone I couldn't see yet. Reporting party? I said. Yeah, kid's a mess. Other one's in the back of the cruiser. Other one? The one who came back out. Right. Cassie had said one subject returned. I'd been thinking about the missing person and hadn't really processed that part. I grabbed my vest from the passenger seat and pulled it on over my jacket. Headlamp, batteries, flare still in the side pocket. Kayla had the rope and harness. Between us, we had enough gear for a basic extraction if it came to that. I walked over to the kiosk. The trooper stepped aside when he saw my vest. The kid standing under the overhang looked exactly how Cassie described. 20, maybe, soaked hoodie, jeans, sneakers that were probably destroyed. His face was pale and his eyes were red. He'd been crying. "Bill Brooks," I said. He nodded fast. Yeah, that's me. "I'm Maverick, SAR. I need you to walk me through what happened. Names first. Who went in with you?" Manuel Webster, and Edwin Robertson." I pulled out my phone and typed the names into a note. Manuel Webster missing. Edwin Robertson returned. "Okay. What time did you go in?" 11, maybe 11:15. "All three of you?" "Yeah. And you came back out when?" "I don't know. Maybe 3:30? "I don't know." His voice cracked. "Edwin came out first. I stayed back because I thought Manuel was right behind him, but he wasn't, and then I heard..." "Slow down," I said. "Edwin came out first. You're sure?" "Yes." "Where is he now?" Bill looked over his shoulder toward the cruiser. He's in the car. The cop put him in there because he wouldn't stop shaking." "Did he say anything, Edwin?" "No. He won't talk. He won't look at me." I wrote that down. Nonverbal, shaking, won't make eye contact. Shock, probably, maybe hypothermia. And Manuel's still inside. "Yeah, I heard him screaming." "Screaming what?" "Just screaming, and there was a light. Way back in the tunnel, it was moving. Moving how? I don't know. Side to side like he was running." "Did you hear a train?" Bill's face went tight. "I heard a whistle, but no train came." I looked at him. "You're sure?" I stood there for 10 minutes. No train. That didn't mean much. The whistle could have been deeper in, past a curve, and the train could have switched tracks or stopped, but I didn't say that. "Okay," I said. "Stay here. Don't go anywhere." He nodded again, fast little jerks of his chin. I walked back to Kayla. She was checking the rope coil, running it through her hands to make sure it wasn't kinked. "Manuel Webster's still inside," I said. "The other one's Edwin Robertson. He's in the cruiser." Kayla looked past me toward the police car. "He okay?" "Don't know yet." I walked over to the cruiser. The trooper saw me coming and opened the back door. Edwin Robertson was sitting in the seat with his knees together and his hands in his lap. His hair was plastered to his forehead and his jacket was soaked through. He was shaking, not like he was cold, like something inside him was rattling loose. His eyes were locked on the trailhead, the path that led down to the tunnel. "Edwin," I said. He didn't look at me. "Edwin, I'm with Search and Rescue. Can you tell me what happened in there?" Nothing. His mouth was open a little. His breathing was fast and shallow. I crouched down so I was at his eye level. "Did you see Manuel? Is he hurt?" Still nothing. But his eyes didn't move. He was staring at the trail like it was the only thing in the world. I'd seen shock before. Plenty of times. Car wrecks, falls, drownings. People locked up, couldn't talk, couldn't process. Edwin looked like that. But there was something else under it. Something that felt more like terror than confusion. I stood up and stepped back. The trooper closed the door. "He been like that the whole time?" I said. "Since I got here," the trooper said. "Won't talk. Won't move unless you pull him." I looked back at the cruiser. Edwin's face was a pale smudge behind the rain-streaked window. That was enough for me. I didn't need clean details. I didn't need a coherent story. A kid was inside the tunnel, and another kid had come out looking like he'd seen the end of the world. That was real. Whatever happened in there was real. I walked back to Kayla. "We're going in." She looked at me. Shane's 15 minutes out. Manuel Webster's been in there since 11. That's 5 hours. Railroad rep? Not here. Maverick, I know. She stared at me for a second. Then she sighed and pulled the harness off her belt. You're lucky I already geared up. Yeah. She clipped into the harness and handed me the spotlight. It was a big stream light, the kind we used for night recoveries. I turned it on and checked the beam. Bright and clean. Kayla grabbed a second headlamp from her truck and tossed it to me. Backup. I clipped it to my vest. We walked down the trail. It was narrow and muddy, and the rain made the roots slick. The path dropped through the trees for about a quarter mile, then opened up at the east portal of the tunnel. The entrance was a tall arch of brick, dark red and streaked with rust and water stains. The mouth was maybe 15 feet wide and 12 feet high. No lights, no gate, just the arch and the rails disappearing into the black. I clicked on my headlamp. Kayla did the same. The beams cut into the tunnel and died about 30 feet in. Stay on the right, I said. If a train comes, we hug the wall. If a train comes, we're dead, Kayla said. Probably. She didn't laugh. We stepped onto the tracks. The ballast crunched under my boots. The ties were old and splintered and slick with rain. I tested my footing and kept the spotlight aimed forward. The tunnel swallowed us. The first 50 yards were what I expected. Brick walls, wet and cold, old rails, the smell of stone and iron and standing water. The headlamps bounced off the walls and made shadows jump. Our boots echoed. I kept the spotlight steady and swept it side to side every few steps. Nothing. Just track and ballast and brick. At 100 yards, the rain sound cut off. We were deep enough now that the portal was a small gray circle behind us. At 200 yards, I smelled it. Hot grease, fryer oil, the kind of thick, sticky smell you get standing over a vent at a diner. I stopped. Kayla stopped behind me. What? You smell that? She sniffed. Yeah, what is it? I don't know. It didn't make sense. The tunnel should have been cold, damp, maybe a little moldy, not hot, not greasy. I kept moving. 10 steps later, I realized the echoes were wrong. Our boots should have sounded close, sharp. The tunnel was narrow, brick on 3 sides. Sound should have bounced back fast and tight. But it didn't. The echoes were smooth, distant, like the tunnel was twice as wide as it looked. I stopped again and stomped my boot once on the ballast. The sound came back soft and late. Kayla heard it too. That's not right. No. I turned and shone the spotlight at the walls. Brick, solid, maybe 10 feet away on each side. I turned forward again and stomped. Same thing. The echo said the walls were 50 feet away. The sound was lying. The folding chair was maybe 20 feet ahead, just sitting there beside the tracks. I stopped walking and put my hand up. Kayla stopped behind me. I aimed the spotlight at it and the beam caught clean metal legs and a canvas seat, the kind you'd bring to a kid's soccer game. Not rusted, not old. New enough that the fabric still had that taut look, no sag in the middle. You see that? I said. Yeah. Kayla's voice was flat. I see it. I stepped closer, keeping the light steady. The chair was positioned maybe 2 feet from the rail, angled slightly like someone had been sitting there watching the tunnel stretch out in front of them. No mud on the legs. No water pooled in the seat, even though we were deep enough now that condensation was dripping from the brick overhead every few seconds. I didn't touch it. That wasn't here during training, Kayla said. No. And it shouldn't be here now. No, I said again. She moved up beside me and swept her own headlamp across the chair, then past it. Her beam caught something else about 10 feet further in, right between the ties. A paper cup. Sheet's logo on the side, that red and yellow print. Medium size, probably a coffee or soda. It was standing upright, perfectly centered between 2 railroad ties. and it was half full. I could see the liquid line through the white paper when I angled the spotlight down. "That's not possible," Kayla said. I crouched next to the tracks and stared at it. The cup wasn't tipped, wasn't crushed. The sides were clean, no dirt, no streaks. The lid was still on. It looked like someone had set it down 30 seconds ago and walked off. "Trains run through here," I said. "Freight trains. The vibration alone would knock that over." "I know. And we're a mile in. Who walks a mile into a train tunnel with a gas station coffee?" Kayla didn't answer. She was looking past the cup now, deeper into the tunnel where our lights couldn't quite reach. Her hand had moved to the carabiner on her harness. She was clicking it open and closed, open and closed. Nervous habit I'd seen before. I stood up and pulled the radio off my vest strap. Tried again. "SAR 4 to base, do you copy?" Static. Louder than before, sharp enough that I pulled the radio away from my ear. Then something cut through. A voice. Male. Clipped and steady. "4, confirm your..." It sounded like someone who knew me. Someone who'd said my unit number 100 times. But it dropped back into static before I could place it, just white noise and a faint hiss that might have been wind or interference or something else. I tried again. "Base. This is SAR 4. We're in the tunnel approximately 1 mile from the east portal. Confirm you copy." Nothing, just static. I clipped the radio back onto my vest. "Shane?" Kayla asked. "Don't know. Cut out too fast." She clicked the carabiner twice more, then stopped. Looked at me. "We should back out." I didn't say anything. "Maverick, we should back out and wait for Shane and the railroad guy and whoever else is coming. This is already past protocol, and now we've got..." She gestured at the chair, the cup. "Whatever this is..." She was right. I knew she was right. We'd already bent the rules coming in here without the railroad rep. And now we had objects that didn't make sense in a place that should have been empty except for Manuel Webster. The smart move was to retreat, regroup, come back in with more people and better communication. I almost said yes. Then I swept the spotlight ahead one more time, just to check the next stretch of tunnel before we turned around. The beam caught someone sitting against the wall. I froze. Kayla saw it too. Her breath went short and fast beside me. It was a young guy, maybe 20, sitting with his back pressed against the brick and his knees pulled up to his chest. His hands were clamped over his ears. His head was down, chin tucked, but I could see wet hair plastered to his forehead and a dark jacket slicked with water or something worse. "Manuel?" I called out. The guy didn't move. I started forward, keeping the light on him. Kayla stayed a half step behind me, her headlamp adding a second beam that threw his shadow long and crooked against the tunnel wall. 20 feet out, I got a better look at his face. My stomach dropped. "That's Edwin," I said. Kayla stopped. "What?" "That's Edwin Robertson, the kid who came out, the one in the cruiser." "That's not possible." "I know. But it was him. Same build, same jacket, same narrow chin and thin mouth, same pale skin, maybe paler now under the lights. He was soaked through, shaking, hands still locked over his ears like he was trying to block out a sound we couldn't hear. I moved closer, slow and careful. My boots crunched on the ballast and Edwin flinched but didn't look up. "Edwin," I said, kept my voice low and steady. "My name's Maverick. I'm with Search and Rescue. I'm here to help." No response. I stopped about 6 feet away and crouched down, trying to get on his level. The spotlight was too bright this close, so I angled it toward the ground. My headlamp caught his face in softer relief. "Edwin, can you hear me?" His breathing was shallow and fast, visible in the way his chest hitched under the jacket. His fingers were pressed so hard against his ears that the skin around them had gone white. "I need you to look at me," I said. "Just look at me so I know you're okay." For a few seconds, nothing. Then his head lifted. His eyes were wrong, not the shape or the color, They were light brown, maybe hazel in better light. But the way they looked, cloudy, dull, like something had filmed over them or drained the focus out. He stared past me at first, gaze tracking somewhere over my left shoulder, and then his hand dropped from his ear and he pointed deeper into the tunnel, behind me. I turned fast, bringing the spotlight up. The beam cut through the dark and hit nothing, just tracks and ties and brick fading into black. Kayla had her light up too, sweeping the tunnel in controlled arcs. I don't see anything. I looked back at Edwin. He was still pointing, arm fully extended now, and his mouth had opened slightly. No sound came out, just that same shallow breathing, faster now, almost panting. "What is it?" I asked. "What's back there?" He didn't answer, didn't blink, just kept pointing. I moved closer, slow, and reached for his wrist to check his pulse. "I'm just going to..." My fingers touched his skin and I almost pulled back. He was cold, not chilled from the rain or the tunnel air, cold like he'd been sitting in a freezer, and his skin was slick, coated with something that wasn't water. It had texture, oily and faintly tacky, and it didn't wipe off when I adjusted my grip. His pulse was there, slow, too slow. Maybe 50 beats per minute when it should have been closer to 70 or 80, especially if he was in shock. "Edwin, I need you to talk to me. Are you hurt? Is Manuel still in here?" Nothing. His eyes stayed locked on the tunnel behind me, wide and unblinking. Kayla crouched beside me and aimed her light at his other arm. "Maverick." I looked. There was a line around his forearm, thin and precise, circling the skin about 2 inches below his elbow. It wasn't a cut, no blood, no scab, but it was there. A seam so clean it looked drawn on with a ruler. Like someone had wrapped a tight band around his arm and left a perfect impression when they removed it. "What the hell is that?" I said. Kayla leaned in closer, her light steady on the mark. "I don't know." I touched the edge of the line with one gloved finger. The skin there felt the same as the rest of his arm, cold, slick, wrong, but the seam itself had a faint texture, slightly raised, like scar tissue that had healed too fast. "Edwin," I said again, "what happened to your arm?" He didn't answer, didn't move. His hand was still pointing into the dark. I heard his jaw work first, not a click or a pop. A grinding sound, wet and mechanical at the same time. Edwin's mouth was still slightly open, breath still coming fast and shallow, but something in his face shifted. His jaw moved side to side, adjusting, and then his lips pulled back just enough to show teeth. That's when the whistle started. It poured out of him, long and rising, then falling, then rising again. The exact pitch and rhythm of freight brakes, the kind that echoes for miles when a CSX train slows on a grade. I'd heard it 100 times from the ambulance bay, but this wasn't coming from down the tunnel or outside. It was coming from Edwin, from his open mouth, from his throat. My headlamp flickered. Just once, a dip in the beam, then steady again. I glanced at Kayla and her light did the same thing. Dipped, came back. Edwin's eyes were still locked on the space behind me. His hand was still pointing, but his mouth kept going, that whistle pouring out without a pause for breath, without his chest moving the way it should if air was actually leaving his lungs. I opened my mouth to say something, probably his name. Maybe stop. I don't know. Edwin snapped toward Kayla. Not turned. Snapped. His whole body pivoting at the waist in one smooth motion. No wind-up, no shift of weight. Fast. Way too fast for someone who'd been sitting catatonic against a wall. His head rotated and his cloudy eyes locked onto her and his mouth opened wider. Wider than it should. I'm not talking about a yawn or a scream. His jaw dropped past the point where ligaments are supposed to stop it, where bone should hit its limit. The hinge just kept going, and the whistling got louder, higher, splitting into 2 tones at once like harmonics on a badly tuned engine. Kayla didn't freeze. She lunged forward and grabbed the front of his hood with both hands and yanked it back off his head. His skull looked wrong. The shape was off. Too smooth on top, like the crown had been pressed flat or capped with something that didn't quite match the rest. The hairline sat lower on one side, uneven, and where his temples should have curved, there were faint edges, seams, like pieces fitted together and smoothed over, but not perfectly. The wet hair plastered across his forehead didn't move the way hair moves. It looked painted on. Kayla said something. I didn't catch it. My brain was still processing what I was seeing, trying to match it to a medical explanation. Skull fracture, hematoma, swelling. But none of that made sense. Swelling doesn't create seams. Fractures don't make your head look like it's been disassembled and put back together by someone who didn't have the right manual. Edwin's mouth stayed open. The whistle kept pouring out. I grabbed Kayla's arm and hauled her back. Pure instinct. No thought. No decision. My hand closed around her jacket sleeve and I pulled hard, yanking her off balance and back toward me. She stumbled and I kept pulling, dragging her away from Edwin, away from that wrong skull and that sound. Edwin rose. He didn't push off the ground, didn't brace his hands or shift his weight, or use his legs the way a person does when they stand. He just rose, smooth and vertical, like something was lifting him from the center, pulling him upright without effort. Then he stepped forward, one foot, then the other, perfect rhythm. Each foot landed square on a railroad tie, no wobble, no adjustment for the uneven ballast between them. Tie, tie, tie. Like he was walking a balance beam, like he'd done it 1,000 times. The whistling didn't stop. It kept going, rising and falling, echoing off the brick. I turned and ran. Kayla was half a step ahead of me now, her boots hitting the ties in quick, uneven beats, nothing like Edwin's rhythm. I had the spotlight in one hand, the beam bouncing wild across the walls and ceiling, catching the folding chair as we passed it. The sheet's cup, the darkness ahead. The tunnel mouth should have been getting closer. We were running full speed, maybe 8 or 9 miles an hour even on the uneven ground. We'd walked a mile in, maybe a little more. At this pace, we should have been closing the distance fast, should have seen the gray outline of the exit within 2 or 3 minutes. But the darkness ahead stayed the same, solid, unbroken. I kept running. My lungs were starting to burn, my boots slipping on the wet ties, and I couldn't see the arch. Couldn't see the faint glow of outside light that should have been there, even in the middle of the night, even in the rain. Kayla shouted, "Help!" One word, loud and clear, her voice cutting through the sound of our boots and my own breathing. Then I heard it again. "Help!" Same word, same voice, but delayed, a half-second behind, like someone else was saying it, like it was bouncing back from further down the tunnel, but wrong, because echoes don't sound that clean. They don't come back with the same tone and pitch. They distort. This didn't distort. It just repeated. I bit down on my tongue. Hard. The pain spiked sharp and immediate, and I tasted blood, copper and warm. Real. That was real. But the whistling wasn't just behind us anymore. It was ahead too. Same rising, falling rhythm, same two-tone harmonic. But now it was coming from both directions at once, surrounding us, filling the tunnel. I couldn't tell how far away it was, couldn't judge distance. The sound destroyed any sense of space, made the tunnel feel like it was collapsing and expanding at the same time. Kayla's hand found my sleeve and gripped it. I didn't look at her, kept my eyes forward, kept moving, even though the exit wasn't getting closer and the whistling was everywhere and my headlamp was flickering again, dipping in and out like the battery was dying even though I'd checked it 20 minutes ago. Then I saw the door. Right wall. Maybe 30 feet ahead. A metal door. Rectangular, flat against the brick. It had faded CSX markings stenciled across the front in yellow paint, mostly worn away. The kind of maintenance access you'd expect to see on railroad property. Except I'd never seen it. Not during training. Not when we walked this same stretch 15 minutes ago on the way in. The wall had been solid brick, unbroken, just like the left side. But now there was a door. I slowed. Kayla slowed with me, still gripping my sleeve, her breathing fast and ragged. The whistling kept going, behind and ahead, and my light beam hit the door square and held. It was real. Solid. The metal was dull gray, streaked with rust at the edges, and the handle was a simple latch, the kind you lift and pull. I stopped 3 feet away from it and stared. That was it. That's where the chapter ended in my head. Me standing there, Kayla beside me, the door in front of us, and the whistling everywhere. Kayla reached for the handle. I didn't stop her. I should have, probably. Should have thought it through, weighed options, done something tactical. But the whistling was coming from both directions now, and my headlamp kept flickering, and I just wanted out of that tunnel. She lifted the latch and pulled. The door opened immediately. Warm air spilled out. Not hot, just warm. Wrong temperature for a maintenance closet a mile into a mountain in April. And the smell came with it. That greasy smell I'd caught traces of before, stronger now, thick enough to taste. Motor oil and something else. Something organic underneath it. I shoved us both through and yanked the door shut behind me without thinking. The whistling cut off. Complete silence, except for our breathing. I stood there with my back against the door, one hand still gripping the handle on this side, chest heaving. Kayla was pressed against the opposite wall, headlamp swinging as she looked around. My spotlight was still in my other hand. I'd forgotten I was holding it. The corridor beyond felt like a completely different world. Poured concrete floor. Smooth, clean, with a faint shine to it, like it had been sealed recently. The walls were concrete too, painted industrial white, and overhead were strip lights. Actual fluorescent strip lights. The kind you see in office buildings or school hallways. They were buzzing. That steady electric hum you stop noticing after a while, but right now it was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. Yellow floor lines ran down the center of the corridor, perfectly straight, the paint crisp and bright. And mounted in the upper corner about 15 feet down, a CCTV camera stared at us with a single glowing red eye. I blinked, looked again, still there. Black dome camera, red LED indicator light steady and unblinking, aimed directly at the door we'd just come through. "Maverick," Kayla said. Her voice was flat, controlled, the way it gets when she's working very hard not to panic. "I see it. Where the hell are we?" I didn't answer. I was trying to force a normal explanation into my head. CSX maintenance tunnel, service corridor for railroad personnel. That made sense. Railroads had infrastructure. They had cameras for security. They had lights and concrete and... I turned my head and saw the wall hooks. There were 6 of them, heavy-duty steel hooks bolted into the concrete about 7 feet up. The kind you'd hang tools on. Or coats. 5 of them held hard hats. Yellow plastic hard hats with the CSX logo stamped on the front, arranged in a neat row. They looked normal at first. Standard issue safety equipment. Then my light caught the inside of the nearest one. There was hair caught in the suspension webbing. Not a few strands, clumps, thick clumps of dark hair tangled in the plastic straps inside the helmet, like someone had been wearing it when something yanked them out of it, or pulled them through it. I moved my spotlight down the row. Every helmet had hair inside, different colors, black, brown, one with gray streaks. One had something else stuck to the webbing, something dark and dried that I didn't want to look at too closely. Trophies. The word popped into my head and I couldn't get rid of it. "Don't," Kayla said. I looked at her. She was staring at the helmets too, one hand gripping the carabiner on her harness, knuckles white. "We need to move," she said. I nodded. She was right. Standing here staring wasn't helping. The corridor extended about 30 feet before ending in a doorway on the left. No door in the frame, just an open rectangle of darkness. The strip lights continued past it, stretching further down the hall, but I couldn't see where they ended. We walked. I kept the spotlight aimed forward. Our boots made flat sounds on the concrete, too loud, no echo. Kayla stayed close, her shoulder almost touching mine. The doorway led into a storage room. I swept the light across it and stopped moving. Lunch boxes, dozens of them, maybe 50, stacked on metal shelving units that lined 3 walls, floor to ceiling. Some of the boxes were new, bright plastic in red and blue, the kind you'd buy at Walmart. Others were old metal ones, rusted at the corners, handles worn down to bare steel. A few were rotted through, fabric sides collapsed and moldy. Each one had a name scratched into it, not written, scratched, like someone had used a nail or a screwdriver to carve letters into the plastic or metal. I stepped closer, angling the spotlight to read them. Jenkins, Morrison, T. Hall, Perez. Names and initials, some neat, some barely legible. I moved the light down the row, scanning them one by one, my brain trying to process what I was looking at, and failing. Then I saw it. Third shelf from the bottom, pushed toward the back behind 2 newer boxes. A green metal lunchbox with a black handle, surface pitted with rust. The name scratched across the front, all caps, spelled correctly, Kennedy. I froze. My last name, right there, carved into a lunchbox that looked 40 years old, sitting on a shelf in a room that shouldn't exist, a mile under a mountain in a tunnel I shouldn't have entered. Maverick. Kayla's voice was tight. I see it. Is that... Yeah. I took a step back, then another. My hand came up without me deciding to move it, palm out toward the shelf like I could stop it from being real if I just pushed hard enough. Kayla grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the doorway. I didn't resist. I wanted out of that room. Away from that box. Away from my name scratched into something that had been here longer than I'd been alive. I backed into the corridor and signaled her. One flat hand, fingers together, don't touch anything. She nodded fast. We kept moving. The corridor turned right, then opened into a wider space. I smelled oil and metal, and that same organic rot underneath. A maintenance bay. It was bigger than the storage room, maybe 20 feet across, with a ceiling that sloped downward toward the back. The floor was concrete too, but stained dark in patches, and it tilted down in a steady grade, disappearing into darkness past where my light could reach. There was equipment bolted to the walls. Tool racks, a workbench, a pegboard with wrenches and hammers hung in perfect rows. Everything clean, everything organized. And the air was moving, not wind, not ventilation. It pulsed, up the ramp toward us in slow, steady intervals. In, then out. In, then out. Breathing. I felt it on my face, warm and damp and wrong. Kayla stopped beside me and I heard her breath hitch. On the wall to our right, mounted above the workbench, was a timetable board. The kind railroads used to track schedules. White plastic board with black magnetic letters arranged in columns. I raised the spotlight. The first column listed destinations. Talcott, Hinton. Then below those, 3 more. Mouth, throat, belly. Beside each destination was a time. Talcott and Hinton had normal times, 0430, 0615. The others had times too, but they didn't make sense. 1,700 hours, 2,300, numbers that didn't fit a 24-hour clock. Kayla made a sound, not a word, just a sound. I didn't look at her. I kept my light on the board, reading it again, trying to make it say something different. It didn't. Behind us, back down the corridor we'd come from, the strip lights dimmed. Not all at once, one by one, starting from the far end. A steady approach, each light dropping to half brightness, then a quarter, moving toward us in a rhythm I recognized. Footsteps. Something was walking down the hallway. I spun and aimed the spotlight back the way we'd come. Empty corridor, yellow floor lines, hooks with helmets. Another light dimmed. Closer now. "Maverick," Kayla said. I turned and ran back toward the door we'd come through. The metal door with the yellow CSX markings. Our way out. Back to the tunnel, back to the east portal, back to the parking lot and the cruiser and the world that made sense. I grabbed for the handle. There wasn't one. Smooth metal. No latch. No hinges on this side either. Just a flat rectangle of steel set flush with the concrete wall. I pressed both hands against it and pushed. Nothing. I shoved harder, putting my shoulder into it. The door didn't move, didn't rattle, didn't give even a millimeter. My glove slid on the surface, and I pulled my hand back, holding it up to the light. Fresh grease, dark and slick, coating my palm. It hadn't been there before. The door had been dry when I pulled it shut. Another strip light dimmed behind us. Kayla moved past me, fast and deliberate, unclipping the rope coil from her shoulder. She found a pipe running along the wall near the entrance to the maintenance bay. A thick steel pipe, probably water or drainage, bolted into the concrete with heavy brackets. She clipped the rope to it with a carabiner, tested the weight, then looked at me. Her face was pale, her jaw set. She pointed down the ramp into the darkness. We had to go down to find another way out. We went down the ramp. Kayla first with one hand on the rope, me half a step behind with the spotlight aimed past her shoulder. The concrete sloped steady and smooth under our boots. No cracks, no seams, just that downward grade pulling us deeper with every step. The air kept pulsing, in, out, warm and wet and rhythmic. I tried not to think about breathing, tried to focus on the circle of light ahead, the back of Kayla's jacket, the rope feeding through her gloved hand. My other palm still had grease on it from the door. I could feel it through the glove now, slick and wrong. Halfway down, I saw something on the floor. Small, rectangular, lit. I stopped, raised my hand. Kayla stopped too and glanced back. "What?" I angled the spotlight down and left. The beam caught it clean, a phone lying face up on the concrete about 6 feet from the wall. Black case, spiderweb crack across the screen. But the screen was still on, glowing pale blue-white in the dark. I stepped toward it. Kayla stayed on the rope. The phone was a newer model, iPhone maybe. The crack ran corner to corner, but the display was visible underneath. I crouched down and didn't touch it yet, just looked. A video app was open, paused, or buffering. The little circle spun in the center like it was trying to send. I pulled my glove off with my teeth and tapped the screen with one bare finger. The video started playing. No sound, just shaky footage of the tunnel. Brick walls, tracks, darkness ahead. The timestamp in the corner read 23:41, 11:41 p.m. The phone wobbled as whoever was holding it walked forward, their breath fogging the lens for a second before clearing. Then the wall on the right started moving. Not crumbling, not cracking, opening. The bricks peeled back slow and wet, separating along lines that hadn't been there a second before, pulling apart in sections like lips, spreading wide. The camera jerked left, then snapped back as if the person couldn't look away. The tunnel wall folded open, and there was something inside the gap, standing in the space between the bricks and whatever was behind them. It was wearing a human body. Not inhabited, not possessed. Wearing it. I could see the edges where the skin didn't fit right, where the seams pulled tight across joints that bent wrong, where the face sagged loose around the eyes and mouth like a mask made of someone's actual face. The thing underneath moved, and the body moved with it, dragging, stretching, splitting slightly at the wrists. I killed the screen. My hand was shaking. I pressed the side button twice, and the phone went black. I sat there on my heels for 3 seconds. breathing through my nose, tasting blood from where I'd bit my tongue earlier. Kayla said my name. I shoved the phone in my vest pocket and stood up fast. "Evidence," I said. "Manuel's phone." She stared at me. "You sure?" "Yeah." I didn't tell her what I saw. We didn't have time, and I wasn't sure I could explain it in a way that made sense. I pulled my glove back on and turned the spotlight down the ramp. We kept moving. The bottom came up faster than I expected. The concrete just ended. The slope flattened out and the walls widened, and we stepped off the ramp onto something else. Rails, 2 of them running parallel into the dark, same gauge as the tunnel above, same spacing. But they weren't steel. They were black, dull black, no shine, no rust. The surface looked smooth from a distance, but up close I could see texture. Fine grooves running lengthwise, thin ridges, little pits and hollows. Organic. The rails looked like they'd grown instead of being laid. I crouched down and put my hand near one without touching it. Bone. That's what it looked like. Polished bone. Long and weight-bearing and wrong. The rail hummed under my palm. Low frequency. I felt it in my teeth. Kayla made a sound behind me. I stood and turned the spotlight forward. There was someone standing 30 feet ahead, right between the rails, facing us. Reflective vest. Bright yellow-green with silver strips catching the light. Dark pants. Work boots. One arm raised holding a lantern. Old-style railroad lantern with a wire handle and glass chimney, flame inside burning steady and orange. I stepped forward. Kayla grabbed my jacket. "Wait." "Someone's here," I said, kept my voice calm, practical. "Maybe railroad personnel, maybe they know a way out." The figure didn't move, didn't lower the lantern, just stood there with the flame lighting them from below. I walked closer. Kayla came with me, her hand still gripping my jacket, the rope trailing behind her back to the pipe up the ramp. At 15 feet, I stopped. I could see the vest clearly now, the reflective strips, the stitching. I could see there was no face. Where the head should have been, where eyes and nose and mouth should have been, there was just smooth skin, flat, unbroken. The lantern light hit it from underneath and the surface glowed faintly, pale and waxy, stretched tight with no features at all. My throat closed up. The figure tilted its head, slow, deliberate, the way you tilt your head when you're looking at something and trying to figure out what it is. Then it raised its other hand and pointed at us. No, not at us, at me. It lowered the hand and touched its own chest, then pointed down at the rails, then pointed at me again. I didn't move. The smooth face turned slightly toward Kayla, then back to me. The hand moved again. Chest, rails, us. And then it held up 2 fingers and tapped them together twice. Kayla whispered, "It's trying to tell us something." "I know." The figure lowered both hands. It took 1 step backward, boots settling on a tie, and raised the lantern higher. I heard my own voice, thin, steady enough. "We need help. There's someone missing. Manuel Webster, college kid. Have you seen him?" The figure stood still, then it turned, smooth, controlled, a full half rotation so the back of the vest faced us. The reflective strips caught my spotlight and flared bright. Then it turned back, and where the smooth blank face had been, now there was something else. The lantern light hit it full on and I saw a mouth, just a mouth, frozen open, lips pulled back, teeth visible, tongue pressed flat, the exact shape of a scream, but no sound coming out. Manuel's mouth, I knew it was his. I don't know how, but I knew. The rest of the face was still blank, still smooth. Just the mouth carved into the skin, wet and dark inside, stretched wide and locked open. I yanked the flare out of my vest pocket. cheap road flare, the kind we keep in the rig for highway stops. I pulled the cap off and struck it against the rough strip on the side. It sparked, caught. Red flame and smoke poured out the end. I held it up between us and the figure. The red light washed over everything. The rails looked darker. The walls looked farther away. The vest looked wrong. The yellow-green fabric wasn't fabric, it was mesh. Tight woven mesh stapled directly into flesh. The silver reflective strips stitched through skin, the edges puckered and raw where the staples bit deep. The chest underneath moved, slow, uneven rise and fall, and the vest moved with it, pulling at the staples, stretching the skin. The blank face rippled. The mouth stayed frozen, but the skin around it moved, shifting and folding. And for half a second I saw Manuel's whole face under the surface. Eyes, nose, cheeks, hairline, pressing up from underneath like he was trapped behind plastic wrap. Then it smoothed out again, just the mouth, wide open, silent. I threw the flare. It hit the ground 5 feet in front of the figure and rolled, spitting red sparks and smoke across the bone rails. I grabbed Kayla's arm and pulled her backward. "Go, now!" She turned and ran. I ran with her, one hand on her shoulder, the other still holding the spotlight. The rails started vibrating, low at first, then stronger, a deep rhythmic shudder running up through the bone into the concrete, into my boots, into my legs. Something was coming. I didn't look back, didn't need to. I could feel it. Pressure building behind us, air pushing forward. That same whistling sound starting up again from deep in the dark. Kayla hit the base of the ramp and started climbing. I was right behind her. The vibration spiked. A wave rolled up through the ground and knocked Kayla sideways. She went down hard on her hands and knees, the rope jerking tight, and I heard her suck air through her teeth. I hauled her up by the back of her harness. Her gloves were shredded. Blood on her palms, dark and wet. "Move," I said. She moved. We fought our way up the ramp. The yellow floor lines on either side started twisting, bending inward, reaching toward us like they were painted on something alive. The walls narrowed. Or maybe we were wider. I couldn't tell. Everything felt wrong. I kept one hand on Kayla's back and pushed. At the top, the corridor was gone. Just brick. Solid brick wall running left to right, floor to ceiling. No gap, no door, no seam. Kayla slammed both palms against it and shoved. Nothing. I swept the spotlight across the surface. The bricks looked real, old, mortared tight. Then I saw it. Hairline seam, vertical, running floor to ceiling about 3 feet to the left. I dropped the spotlight and pulled the trauma shears from my vest. We carry them for seatbelts and clothing and anything that needs cutting fast. Stainless steel, blunt tip, serrated edge. I shoved the tip into the seam and pried. The brick moved, not crumbled. Bent. It bent like rubber, like soft plastic. The edges pulled apart and the seam widened and wet air poured through, cold, damp, smelling like leaves and rain and outside. I dropped the shears and got both hands in the gap and pulled. The brick stretched, tore, opened. Kayla shoved in beside me and we ripped it wider until the gap was big enough to fit through. She went first. I pushed her through and climbed after, my vest catching on the edge, the brick cold and slick under my hands. We fell, landed hard on railroad ties and ballast. Real ties, real stone. I rolled onto my back and looked up. Brick tunnel ceiling, curved arch, water stains, moss. Normal. The air smelled like rain. Kayla was already on her feet, limping, one hand cradled against her chest. I stood and grabbed her good arm and we ran. The tunnel mouth appeared ahead. Gray light, pale and dim but real. We sprinted through it and out into the rain, the gravel lot, the trailhead, the John Henry statue. Vicky Day was standing beside her cruiser. State trooper. tall, solid campaign hat slick with rain. Next to her was a guy in a yellow contractor jacket and hard hat. Taylor Richards, CSX Railroad rep, finally on scene. They both turned when we came up the trail. Vicky stepped forward. "What happened?" I pulled Manuel's phone from my vest and held it out. "Found this inside. Manuel Webster's. He's gone." She took the phone, looked at the cracked screen, looked at me. "Gone how?" "Don't know. We searched, couldn't find him. Encountered hazards. Had to retreat." Taylor was staring at Kayla's hands. "She needs medical." Kayla sat down on the wet gravel and peeled off her gloves. Her palms were torn up, bloody, bits of skin hanging loose. She didn't make a sound. I knelt beside her and opened my med bag. Gauze, tape, antiseptic wipes. I reached for the wipes and my hand hit something hard. I looked down. There was a lunchbox in my bag, small, plastic, bright blue, the kind a kid takes to school. It hadn't been there before. I packed this bag myself. I knew every item. I pulled it out slow, scratched across the top in rough letters. Kennedy. The surface was warm, not hot, just warm, like someone had been holding it. I snapped it shut, shoved it under the gauze and antiseptic and everything else, zipped the bag. Vicky was talking, asking questions. I answered on autopilot. Yes, approximately 1 mile in. No visual contact with Manuel Webster. Yes, structural hazards. No. I can't specify. It was dark and we had to move fast. Kayla didn't say anything. Just let me wrap her hands. When we were done, I walked to my truck, put the med bag in the passenger seat, started the engine. Shane pulled up as I was backing out. He got out of his vehicle and flagged me down, but I rolled my window down 2 inches and told him I had a written report coming and I needed to get Kayla to the ER. He let me go. I drove Route 60 west, back through Talcott, back through Hinton, rain coming down steady, wipers on full. Kayla was in her own truck behind me. I could see her headlights in the mirror. Somewhere past Sandstone, I heard it. Faint. Distant. A train whistle. Long, low, steady. It matched my pulse exactly. I turned the radio on. Turned it up. Drove home through the rain. The lunchbox stayed in my bag. Still warm. I didn't open it.